There's times that you were laying in bed, suffering in silence, having to try to figure this out on your own, how you're going to keep this business going. What kept you from quitting in those moments?
To keep going, just this unwillingness to admit that I could even fail. I will exercise literally to the point where I'm like sick for 3 days. I'm excessive, so I do everything in excess. That's why I have to make certain life decisions to ensure that I can stay on a good path, because I'm just go, go, go all the time. And I think I have a confidence in myself that it will work out, and that's what kept me going. I think luck definitely has to play there. I think I was prepared to receive the luck, so that helps me get through that idea of like it was just all luck, but I think it was just.
Welcome, entrepreneurs, to Pay or Quit,
where we reveal the gritty truth behind business success.
People see the glory, but not the struggle it takes to get there.
We're here to share the real stories of entrepreneurs navigating the tough intersection of business and relationships. I'm Tony Klein.
And I'm Shawn Johnson. And together we'll guide you through the real challenges faced as serial entrepreneurs.
Join us for the untold stories behind the scenes.
Buckle in, it might get messy. The founder of Sellacopter, a brokerage service helping people buy and sell helicopters. In addition, he just launched a new brand called North American Aircraft Brokerage, NAAP. Halsey is also the host of the Helicopter podcast, where he brings valuable insights into the aviation industry, specifically in helicopters. With his unique transition from professional pilot to entrepreneur, Halsey is here to share his real truths and building a business in a very niche market. Halsey, we're excited to have you. Can you talk to us a little bit about that transition and where you went from a professional helicopter pilot to an entrepreneur and what really motivated you to do that?
Yeah, perfect. Well, thanks guys for having me on the show. It's fun to be on a podcast. I've been hosting the podcast now for a couple of years. And so I like to talk about myself. It's a fun transition. So thanks for having me on. And I'm really excited to share kind of my story and my businesses. For me, always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I was the kid that was mowing lawns, reinvesting in that business, buying more equipment so I can mow more lawns. Just always kind of had that mindset. And then going through traditional education in school, high school and whatnot. I had a great education actually, but I had some learning disabilities. And specifically I was put on what's called an IEP, an individual education plan. And it was great for some things, but on other things, I think it kind of gave me this stigma that maybe I wasn't that intelligent. And so my entrepreneurial spirit kind of died, getting into middle school and especially by the end of high school. I never thought I had the brain power to be an entrepreneur, to be in business. I thought I could at least be a pilot, so that's good. So instead of going to college and doing all that, I just went to flight school and started my helicopter career very young, which was awesome. But then kind of that entrepreneurial spirit kind of lingered back in. Again, some self-doubt of, man, I don't know if I'm smart enough to do this. And by happenstance, about 7 years ago, probably actually, I was flying for this gal out of South Texas, and I was flying her around the oil field. There was a large oil play there called the Eagle Ford Shale, big fracking thing, and she had a disposal well company. And I would be flying her around and boom or bust, right, with oil. So when that started to go down, she essentially was like, hey, if you want to keep getting paid, you got to get the helicopter making money. And so I wanted to get paid. I had no choice. So I just started working the helicopter, figured out a way to get authorization through the FAA to do nonstop commercial air tours, non-135, but 91 nonstop stuff, which, obviously, Shawn, I think you understand. And then built this little company in the hill country of Texas, ran it for a year, did pretty good. Not good enough for her to want to keep the helicopter and keep me around, but enough to kind of reignite my entrepreneurial spirit. And it made me realize to myself, like, oh man, I'm capable of this. And so I helped her sell her helicopter. And that was my light bulb moment of, I think that's my business actually, is selling helicopters, because I think I can do it better than some of the people that are doing it existing.
That is a fascinating story. I did not know that about your sales experience. How did you know that you had the sales knack in you? That not everybody has that or feels like they have that.
I think I've always been told from a young age that I had a bit of a sales personality. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think people. I remember as even a little kid, whether I was selling lemonade or mowing lawns, people had always made a comment about, "Oh man, you're an old soul," you're a salesman, And so I think it was always kind of ingrained in me that I definitely had that knack, and I do love connecting with people. And if I'm passionate about what I'm selling and I believe in it, to me, then it's not even selling. It's just telling people that I care about the awesome things that we have. So to me, it's just been really natural and easy, specifically on the helicopter side, because that's kind of where my expertise lies.
In your podcast with Jason Hill, you mentioned that you had a business that had failed before. And, we often use this statistic in the Harvest Business Review that 45% of CEOs have had at least one major business failure. And Tony always says the other ones are liars. But talk to us a little bit about that, like where that experience took you and how you learned from that to be a better entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it wasn't immediate light bulb like I kind of mentioned in the back about selling helicopters. The light bulb came a little bit after, but what happened is this entrepreneurial spirit was ignited after I sold that helicopter, and I was working for Maverick Helicopters at the time in Las Vegas. And yeah, I started really diving deep into e-commerce, specifically fulfillment by Amazon. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, FBA. And man, I got like my master's degree. I was listening to every podcast. I was doing as much possible research as I could, and I found some markets in which I thought maybe I could enter. I thought I could maybe work with some manufacturers overseas to create a better mousetrap, essentially. So I invested a lot of time, money, energy, and effort into that, and it just was continually one problem after the other. Whether it might be a manufacturing issue or um, delays in shipping, the fees that were taken by Amazon. It just was always consistently a bit of a calamity of errors, and it got to the point where I realized, like, man, I don't actually enjoy this. Like, there's nothing. Even though I've done all this research and I feel like I'm pretty well versed in it, like I'm not really an expert in this field, and specifically with the products that I was trying to sell. And so that's actually when the light bulb came off of like, man, I should probably stick with what I know. And I had that sales experience with the helicopter, and that's when I transitioned into kind of going back home, so to speak, and into what I was really familiar with.
I want to dig a little bit deeper into the transition that you had when you were first flying that helicopter for the lady with the oil fields and starting to see a little bit of success. You started to see a little bit of, hey, I could sell my time and do these tours, and I have the resources available to me to be able to do that. You started to see a little bit of success, and then that kind of got pulled out from underneath you. It sounds like she decided it's not worth keeping the helicopter, so we're going to have to change directions at this point. And so you started to see a little success there, but then you had to reposition. So take us back to that moment of what that transition looked like.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the writing had always kind of been on the wall. She was really, I think, risk adverse is the right word, and so the helicopter really actually scared her for a lot of reasons, specifically on the liability side. You start taking passengers in a helicopter. We actually ended up flying over 1,000 people in that helicopter when I was operating it on tours. And I think that the liability ultimately was kind of what was really bugging her. And she was open and transparent about that. So I always knew it was going to be an uphill battle. There's also not a big push to invest in the business to make it bigger or better. As Shawn may know, the best way to have a good tour company with a helicopter is you have to have at least two helicopters, because helicopters always break at the worst times. It's Friday afternoon, Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day weekend, 4th of July. Guaranteed the helicopter is going to break. And so having a backup would have been really helpful, and we could have kind of kept going. So we had a lot of success, but then we had a lot of maintenance that really cut into the bottom line. And so I had enough knowledge at that time to kind of see the writing on the wall that, we were profitable, but not extremely profitable. And with the liability, and then she had some personal things going on in her life, I knew that it was short lived. So I just did everything I could. And when she kind of decided to pull the plug, I wasn't super surprised. I wasn't even all that discouraged. I thought it was a great experience. I had a great time, but there was a lot. It was hard, because I was out there. I was kind of a one-man operation during the week, and then I had a hired help during the weekend. I was literally standing on the side of Highway 290 in a little pilot uniform, waving to cars to encourage them to come in. I was getting bit by the whatever's in the grass there. Um, and I was in a piston helicopter still, the R-44, which nothing against that, but I was definitely eager to start flying some bigger aircraft. And so it gave me great confidence, and I was actually kind of excited to continue building my helicopter experience after that.
So how long after you decided that it was time to sell the helicopter, or she decided it was time to sell, and then you sold it, was there a period of time in between selling it and saying, "Hey, that was like a lot of fun and I was kind of good at it," or that spark to be able to figure out how to get your own business up and running?
Yeah, there's actually a bit of a gap in between because, like I said, my entrepreneurial spirit was reignited during that whole operation. Uh, but getting into Las Vegas, focusing on flying, I was flying Monday through, well, not Monday through Friday, but it was a 5 day, two off type of situation. I was flying a ton. Um, the brokerage idea had come into my head after doing it. I made some decent money. It seemed like a fairly easy process. It was also unregulated, essentially. So, unlike real estate, there wasn't a requirement or anything to go and get certification. But that also being said, it felt too big to me. It felt like something that was maybe, again, a little bit over my expertise. And so, again, I really, at that point, for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, probably just focused solely on doing the e-commerce thing through, Amazon FBA, also Shopify, and things like that. And it wasn't until those avenues kind of made it apparent that that was probably not going to be my path to success. Then I reconnected with a friend of mine in Texas. He owned a maintenance shop. He was talking about how people come in and ask him about selling helicopters, and he refers them to someone else. That's when that light bulb kind of came off again and said, well, actually, maybe you should refer them to me, or we can actually start our own business together and we can sell helicopters. And that was really the birth of, at that time, what was called Aircraft Brokerage of Texas.
One of the things I'm really fascinated by is when entrepreneurs start a business and then at some level they see the potential to 10x the dream or 10x the opportunity. And when you told me you were looking at the FBA with Amazon, when you mentioned that, what popped into my head, which I don't know if this is what you were actually selling, but what popped into my head was like, okay, you're going to sell used books on there, and you're going to sell toilet paper, and you're going to try to figure out how to source things and just sell it. And so, to me, that seems like a much smaller. How can I stack some pennies together to try to make a little bit of dough to keep my life moving, to this large jump to I'm going to actually sell helicopters, which to me, like those require two different sets of guts to me, right? And so what allowed you to have that confidence to say, I was trying this thing on Amazon, I kind of figured out some things, I have that entrepreneurial spirit, I'm pretty good with sales, I'm just going to make the jump. I've got this connection. Let's just try it out. Was it a sort of, let's just see if two guys on a weekend could figure something out, or was this like, I got a business plan and we're going to make millions, and like, where were you
Yeah.
there with your confidence in it?
Man, there's nothing like that for sure. I actually remember having the phone call. I was on 1604 heading out to I-35 talking to my buddy Mike about it. And yeah, we just kind of like, I think that could work. And so we just started kind of slowly going down this path of building a business. I think we invested, maybe $5,000 total and helping get a website built, and help paid for some of the listing platforms like Controller and Trade Playing off the bat. But To be honest, there was no big, I honestly thought it'd be a great side hustle. I was working now air medical at that time, and I actually enjoyed most of that, and thought that was going to be like my forever career. And I can then sell helicopters on the side as kind of beer money. And it really took about 2 years of doing both to where I realized that actually my passion was in helicopter sales, and that if I just committed to going full time to helicopter sales, then I could really 10x it. And that's actually pretty much what happened, right? I quit flying. Um, Conveniently enough, COVID happened like 2 weeks after that, so that was really scary. But it actually worked out in my favor. There's a lot of panic selling, so I was able to capture that market and sell, 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 sell. And then interest rates, as we all know, dropped super low, and that included aviation financing, which has always been higher. And we were seeing rates, sub 4%. So then there was a buying frenzy. So I think COVID was really scary for me at first, but then it actually ended up being a great experience. Um, and it was at that time, when I left flying full time, that's when I really went from like side hobby to, okay, this is a real business now. I'm going to do real business things. And ever since that time, we've just been growing on that and putting together a well-oiled machine.
Love it. So, the helicopter world is governed by a lot of regulatory bodies. And I can't imagine like selling that first helicopter and you're really discovering I'm assuming you discovered a lot of different hurdles or roadblocks through that process. How is that helicopter industry different than, other industries in that regulatory world? And what are some misconceptions that people really don't understand about that?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that there is some type of standard process to selling and buying helicopters. That's probably misconception number one, because there is none. In fact, helicopters are way behind, and there's no standard process. And that's what I realized very early on, that, okay, I think if I create a standardized approach, and that's part of our mission, is a systematic approach to helicopter acquisitions and sales, then I can create a repeatable process, and then I can bring more people into that, share that repeatable process with them, and then they can rinse and repeat. And so that's kind of the big surprise. A lot of people try to buy and sell helicopters on their own, and they get burned because there are a lot of, there's getting through the pre-purchase inspection and understanding the pre-purchase inspection and understanding the reports, going through the escrow process, specifically the title process. I can't tell you how many helicopters we'll pick up, and we'll do some title work on it. It's like, hey, do you know that you have a $350,000 lien on this aircraft from 20 years ago? And they're like, but no idea. What's escrow? Right. So, it's very not uncommon to see those things in this helicopter industry. And so that was, I think, kind of the biggest misconception. And as far as like learning, everything that we do now is because I had made a mistake and messed it up in the past. Literally, it's like we have a 76 sales step approach that we take when we sell a helicopter. And each one of those steps is a step that I had messed up in the past. So similar to like aviation, where they say that, the FAR aim is written in blood. Like our sales process is written in all my mistakes, all the things that I messed up. Luckily, nothing ever catastrophic. We don't have any helicopters that have ever, been involved in any accidents after closing or anything like that. But just lots of little dumb mistakes. And so it's definitely been a learning process. And I continue to learn something new every day, as I think we probably all do within our own industries.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so common with businesses. We write the processes by the mistakes. One thing I thought was really cool. Your website lists the total sales as almost like a stock ticker on
Yeah.
there, and that is not a small number. It's right now it's at almost 79,000, almost 80 million dollars. But I know, when you look at helicopters, they have a bigger ticket price. I don't know what the average helicopter price is, but I'm guessing it's north of 1 million. But still, that's $80 million in sales. That's really impressive. How long have you guys been in business? And And really tell me more of like what has been maybe the darkest moment of starting this niche business.
Yeah, well, I'll start with that. Early on, there was lots of dark periods, really. It's very scary to start something and leave your full-time comfort, and I work with a lot of sales reps that are now part of my business where we have to have that discussion. Like, if you were to come and do this full-time, I think you would see the benefits, but that's a really scary hurdle to overcome because I think as humans, we're just conditioned to have this idea of security, consistent paycheck, health benefits, all those things. And so when I actually left flying full time, my wife and I had saved up like maybe $25,000, and I did not get a paycheck for a long time. We had no benefits for a long time, and so there was a lot of nights. Specifically, I suffer quietly, if that makes sense. So I don't really try to share too much externally, specifically with my wife and family and things like that. So a lot of my scary moments are laying in bed at night, and looking at the dark ceiling and wondering, "Oh my god, what am I doing?" And I remember early on there were some deals that, man, if they just went through, that would really help accelerate and that would give us the cash flow that we need to keep the doors open for just another couple months. And those deals would get so um rocky at times. And I can remember specifically a deal that we were selling a couple helicopters to Australia, and it was keeping me up every night. And luckily, it ended up closing, and that was exactly what we needed, to keep the business and the doors open. So a lot of moments like that early on that were scary, and then yeah, I think it's been full time about 4.5 years. I think coming up, I think the end of this year will be the end of really 5 years of like full-time selling. And yeah, it's been an adventure. That first year was pretty dark just because it was scary and with the COVID and everything, a lot of uncertainty. But again, we did pretty good. So that was nice. And then I think just like any other business, I mean, look, um, more money, more problems. I still suffer daily from lots of stress of this and that, and we've done so much so quickly. Sometimes that growth can be hard to manage, and so that's kind of what we're working on right now. Is how can we better manage our team to ensure that they're being efficient and we're helping them and giving them the support they need. And so that's causing me now a lot of stress and I think owning a business is certainly not for the faint of heart, but once it really starts to succeed, man, there's no better feeling.
I think you mentioned that you suffered in silence. And I think that's a really common theme for entrepreneurs because we don't know who to tell. And, I've been married for a long time and I share almost everything with my wife, but there are certain things that, at least as a man, you don't want to share that vulnerability of like, I don't know how to lead us. I don't know how to get through this next step. And I think that that's one of the missions that I personally have with this podcast is making it comfortable for us to share that we're out there doing great things, trying to accomplish something new that we've never done before. We're on the edge of our comfort zone or pushed way out of it. We're in that area where there's a lot of imposter syndrome that we can feel because again, if you're doing something that you're really good at, then you're probably not growing that much, right? So anytime we try to grow, we start to experience that imposter syndrome. We start to get on the edge of our skill set. But that's where a lot of that growth comes from. Even when you mentioned, a lot of your process came through the mistakes, you grew through those mistakes to be able to have a much better system coming through on the other side. So I think it's really common that people, entrepreneurs, suffer in silence. But I want to take it a step further from that. So there's times that you were laying in bed, suffering in silence, having to try to figure this out on your own, how you're going to keep this business going. What kept you from quitting in those moments? Because it's so easy to just say, you know what, this was the one last thing that I just can't keep. I can't keep going with this. What kept you going in those moments?
Yeah, it's a good question. And a good statement too. I think I tell people all the time that, sometimes being an entrepreneur feels a little bit lonely because, most of my friends and friend groups, they all work for someone and they do things that are, more traditional and they get their standard paycheck and things like that. So I don't always feel like I have a great group to connect with. I've been trying to actually connect with local entrepreneurs within my geographic location here, just to, even if they're not in my industry, I think I can learn so much from different people and different businesses. So I would definitely encourage that for other people, and also just that's a cool thing about selling helicopters. I get to meet with really successful entrepreneurs all the time. Guys and gals that can afford helicopters on the private side, usually business owners, usually done really well for themselves. And so I have great mentorship with my clients. A lot of my clients become friends, and a lot of them become mentors. And so I've just been so lucky to keep going. Man, I think just this unwillingness to admit that I could even fail. And maybe that sounds cliche, but I've just always been, I will exercise literally to the point where I'm like sick for 3 days, right? I'm just always, I'm excessive. I'm an excessive person. Uh, and so I do everything in excess. And that's why I have to make certain life decisions to ensure that I can stay, on a good path because I'm just go, go, go all the time. And I think I have a confidence in myself that it will work out. And that's what kept me going. Whether the writing was on the wall or not, I think it could have been a toss up. I think luck definitely has to play there. I think I was prepared to receive the luck, so that helps me get through that idea of like it was just all luck. But yeah, I think it was just a tenacity of never wanting to give up.
Yeah, I think so common, entrepreneurs just we're like bullheaded or the ones that actually see success in it. I think they summarize it with, the word grit. You just keep pushing through no matter what. And I've had a couple failed businesses, and it's interesting. I never really understand what the switch is. Like what's going to make this one fail and the next one succeed until you're like in it. You know what I mean? In the failure process or in the success process, if you will. And I don't know what it is, but it's bizarre. You push through. How do you balance the, like you mentioned, like you have more of a obsessive nature to you. How do you balance that with your life and put those boundaries up where like I don't want to cross this boundary because it's going to suffer the family and vice versa?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think first and foremost, for me, I stay away from anything except coffee. Like, uh, I think anything else for me can be a little bit dangerous. And so, I choose not to drink. I don't use nicotine or other drugs or things like that. So that's again, I think I have the personality where I can go hard on things. So that's first and foremost. I draw pretty firm lines on that, even if social drinking, things like that, I just none. So I think that's a big part of it. And then I really try to take care of myself for at least 2 hours a day. And for me, that's in the morning time. So I get up around 5:45. I don't look at my phone. I come upstairs. I have a gym. I work out. I get in my car. I drive to the Deschutes River. I jump in the Deschutes River. Um, I get home. If I have a little bit of extra time, I'll take a quick hot tub. I'll shower. And then around 8 a.m., when all that's completed, I have our sales stand up. And then I look at my phone. And then the day's going. And that's been kind of a new routine of this last 8 or 9 months. My routine previous to that was I would work out midday and I would start my day by looking at my phone. In fact, I would get up to pee at like 3 in the morning and start going through emails and text messages and start stressing, and for me, stress is something that you have to really mitigate it. I think stress is a legitimate hormone. I'm not a doctor, but I think cortisol is released in your body and it can wreak havoc. And so, for me, I realized that man, that was an issue. And so, uh, at least 2 hours a day of kind of me time before I really get into it. I just find that I do better. So that's been really big in helping with my process.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So yeah, I heard a saying. I actually had former business coach that used to always say, stress is like smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. It takes years off your life. And I think that's legit. How do you, I assume, I think your wife is also in the business and helps out. So you
Mhm.
guys, with that nature, I imagine you guys are able to bounce ideas off each other really well. Kind of talked about that dynamic to, as you're growing this business, how do you guys work together as a team?
Yeah, it's great. So shout out to Hillary, wonderful wife, wonderful human, and wonderful person to be in business with. Her and I have very different roles at the company. So her background prior to this life, she was an executive admin, but also an admin for sales teams. And so it kind of seemed like, oh man, this was a good fit. And early on, she came on. I think it's been about 4 years, and it was just by happenstance. She lost her job. And I was like, well, why don't you come work at Sellacopter? You're not going to make any money, but maybe, maybe you could help, help me get to the point where some of the things that I'm not good at that are important, like receiving money and paying bills and other things, that like I'm sometimes just go, 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 go sales. So she came in and she really cleaned all that up. She really helped build a robust accounting practice. Since that time, we now have, a third party that comes in and works really closely with our accounting. So I feel like we have great accounting practices, but she was a big part of building that. And she's a big part of keeping that going, every day. And um, so we live very separate lives in the business. She's very much doing things very self sufficient. There's very little questions from her. She just knows what to do. The sales team relies on her heavily. And so even though we work together, it's not uncommon where at the end of the day, I can walk downstairs and see her for the first time. We just don't have that much interaction in this business because we just have completely different roles, and she's just kicking ass and taking names. And she's like the backbone, right? She does everything that I'm not great at and the things that are actually really important to running a business. So I couldn't do it without her. That's for sure.
You mentioned you spend a lot of your time on the sales side of the business, and I know in order to close sales, you have to have leads. And so I wanted to get a little bit of insight in how you go about generating those leads. I would assume, and this is just an assumption from the outside world, but a lot of your business is driven, it's relationship driven.
Hmm.
And so I'm curious, and I want to touch on how this ties into the podcast that you've got. But there's a lot of different ways that you can generate business. And what have you found to be kind of that sweet spot for you to generate business? And then how does that podcast tie into that?
Yeah, so now it's business, getting business for Halsey personally as deals come in, and actually when deals come in to me, they get distributed through the team now. But that's a network deal. I've been working hard to build a network. Shawn and I got connected through a network friend of mine, so I have a lot of connect the dots, and I've definitely built a brand around myself and my business Sellacopter where people know they can pick up the phone and call Halsey, and I can help with helicopter sales acquisitions. But early on, that looked like a lot of cold calling actually. So before I had kind of the network that I had to build that. And my whole thought was like, hey, look, like you said, Tony, I think it's a relationship deal, and I'm guessing that other brokers have the same database list that I'm looking at, and they're probably calling and they're probably being fairly aggressive. And so my stance was like, I'm not going to be aggressive. I'm here for the long term relationship. And so I would start having cold calls and not even talk about sales, not even really talk about wanting to sell their helicopter. In fact, I used to play a game to where I would try to get them to ask me, like, hold on, so do you sell helicopters? Because then it was like, it would get me into this, oh, yeah, of course. And that's actually why I'm calling. But we just talked 30 minutes about your family and what you do with your helicopter and how the helicopter's been great for you and how it's been hard. And I've given you some advice. And so I found that cold calling was really natural and easy for me because I just enjoyed talking about helicopters. And I was okay to then put that person into a CRM and nurture them for a long period of time, sometimes over a year or even close to 2 years. I have a deal right now that we just got an agreement signed on yesterday. I mean, myself and team have been nurturing that deal for a year and a half. But it's a big deal, so it's cool, right? So our new guys start the same way I did. We put them through a 3 to 4 week intensive kind of indoctrination into our company, which includes a lot of role playing. So lots of cold calling, lots of cold outreach, building new relationships. I also found that listings beget listings. So if I had, say, a Bell 407 for sale, or a Robinson R66 for sale, early on, I had the wherewithal through good people, by the way. None of this I've done by myself. I've had tremendous support in building systems, but I could look at our CRM and I could say, okay, who's everyone that we know that has an R44 and might want an R66? I'm going to direct market this 66 that we have to them. And by doing that, I think then they see, oh man, like this guy picks up the phone and is trying to sell the helicopter, whereas other people are just listing it and hoping it sells. And so that was just kind of how I personally got to the network build, and that's what I tried to mentor my team to do as well.
The podcast, I imagine you have a pretty good following, and the helicopter world is pretty small market. I think there's like 15,000 registered helicopter pilots.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, something like that. You and I being two of the 15,000.
Yeah, we're look at us, man. We're awesome.
That's right. But
come on, Tony, where you at, bro?
I'll ride on Shawn's. We're okay with that.
Yeah. Tony's probably jealous because most of the time we talk about ultra marathon running, and this whole episode has been nice around the helicopter world. So,
Tony, are you an ultra guy?
Yeah, we have we try to fit both flying, being a pilot, and ultra running into every episode, and it just happened to. Thanks, Shawn, for sneaking that in.
Yeah, can you imagine? Impressive. Like that's a lot of ego in one room, isn't it?
That's crazy. I tangent, but yeah, when I quit drinking like 5.5 years ago, and when I did that, I stopped everything. I went whole food plant based for like 2.5 years, and I started running. I felt like Forrest Gump. I just started running. I had no idea what I was doing, and I had no particular ambitions on anything. But man, I just started racking in miles and got so into running. I was listening to running books. I learned all about the Tarahumara people in Mexico.
Yeah. Born to Run.
What a fantastic book. I loved it, at least. I read, oh man, I'm trying to think of some of the other books. I mean, I got really into running. And I had like this idea of like, man, I would love to do ultras. And I was putting in some serious miles, but never got to an ultra. And man, I was having to get up at like 2 a.m. so I could get my miles in. So then I could be at the helicopter, an hour away from my house by, 8:30 a.m. So it just became a little too much. I have so much respect for anyone that can run more than, anyone that can run like, 5 miles consistently is impressive, to me, because I know how hard that is. It's very difficult on the body.
Well, here's a personal invite for you. So I'll be running the Cocodona 250 in the spring, and then I'll be running the Moab 240 in the fall of 2024. So if you ever want to come out and just hang out and maybe fly your helicopter.
I was going to say, I think in Moab, I have access. One of the cool things about selling helicopters is I have access to a lot of helicopters, and that could be fun. I think we should stay in touch because I think that there's maybe some cool things we could do to help support that effort with a helicopter.
Cool. Yeah, we'll do race support and race following, and we'll pretty much be in a hover the whole way.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Yeah, kudos to you. Anyone that runs ultras. Something that I found curious, and obviously this is your podcast, but something I found within learning about ultras and things is that a lot of those people have interesting paths, specifically with addiction and other things like that. So it really resonated with me with some of the alcoholism and things like that. So, it's a pretty, I think it takes a pretty crazy person to be able to do that. So man, kudos to you.
Oh, thanks. I think we'll tie this back into what we're talking about here.
Podcast. Sorry.
I agree. No, I agree that ultra runners do have a pretty interesting past. I would say a majority of them have one of two things. They either have a drug and alcohol or some sort of addiction problem, or they've had some serious health problem that they've had to overcome. And it gives you the ability to suffer well for a really long time. And going through those things and being able to suffer and come out the other end, you just have that grit that Shawn was talking about earlier to be able to get through it. And I think that's why I ask a lot of these questions about the moment when you want to quit in business and you don't. I think that a lot of those ultra running and business and addiction and all of these things are really closely tied together, because in order to be an entrepreneur or an ultra runner or an addict, you have to be able to suffer and come through the other side. And so I
Well,
think
yeah.
all three of those things are tied together.
And it's interesting because a lot of my big miles were actually happening as I was starting this business full time. And so 100% agree with you. There's so many times that I wanted to quit on a run. And as you know, it kind of, at least for me, it came in waves. You know, I want to quit. Okay, I'm good. I want to quit. And, just being able to break through that has been fantastic. So I don't run as much anymore. My new way of doing that is with cold plunging.
Yeah,
I find that there's no actual benefits that they talk about for cold plunging other than the mental fortitude of it.
I would agree with
You're
that.
killing the
Yeah.
you're killing the marketing on this now.
Yeah.
I
There's
know.
a lot of
Yeah.
good marketing on that. It's so funny you talk about that, because like this morning, for instance, I have a similar routine as yours, Halsey. I get up about 5:45. I get up and I go straight to work out. Well, I brush my teeth and then I go straight to work out. And I usually spend about an hour to work out. I haven't dedicated it 2 hours, but this morning was one of those mornings like I did not want to do it. And it took everything to just do burpee. All I did was burpees this morning because my mind was checked out, and I was like, I was just glad I just did that. You know what I mean? Like it was going to,
Mhm.
my mind was going to give me every excuse not to do anything. And
100%.
it's just it's so funny. It's no different than business. I remember this
Every
time when
day.
I was in flight school. And you probably know Gordon, who owned Universal Helicopters, big name.
Oh, yeah.
And I told you yesterday, but I really had this mission to try to get my private rating in 30 days. And that was pretty ambitious for me. I had a
That's
full
a
time.
tall, that's a tall order. That's a tall order.
It's a lot. And people that haven't been through flight school, it's school. You're busting your hump to make that happen. And I remember I went to my pre flight exam. So like Gordon did an internal check to make sure you were ready for your private check ride, and he chewed my butt inside and out. And it was rightfully so. But I remember there was like a pivotal moment in my adulting life that, like, dude, you got to take this serious. You got to take anything serious. And if you should do anything, you got to do it the best you can.
No,
Uh,
100%.
so, it's just a reminder of, the mornings sometimes suck, but dude, just put in the work, right? Get in the
You
reps.
gotta, yeah, you got to do it, and you got to take care of yourself. And I think physical fitness is a part of that. I've let it slip actually. I was very much in shape, and then I fell off. I got so immersed in my business, put on 30 pounds, became pre-diabetic, felt horrible, and so this really 8 to 9 months has been me trying to get back to where I was, and my business has seen a positive impact. Like by being more active and actually taking care of myself. And so I think it's so important. I think you also have to give yourself grace sometimes though too. I think as an entrepreneur, the mindset is like, go, 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 go. And by and large, right, we work long hours, we do lots of work, busy, busy. Hopefully there's a big reward at the end. But I think it's also okay to take some time off and spend it with your family. This morning, I told Shawn I feel sick. I have like a cold. My throat's killing me. I slept horrible. My alarm went off this morning. I said, "Look, the best thing that I can do for Halsey today is I'm going to use that 2 hours to get more sleep. Like that's going to be the best move for Halsey today. And I'm not going to let this anxiety build that I didn't work out today because I made the decision of, hey, look, the best thing that I can do is actually get a little more rest."
Yeah. I think for me, when I look at whether it's business or running or any sort of exercise program, it's the incremental progress over time. When I line up at a starting line of a big race, I don't win that race or have a good performance that day because I showed up that day. I have a good performance because I showed up the 180 days, day after day, consistently.
100%.
And there used to be, so I have a coach, a running coach, and I used to really not like to take the days off. You have to, when you're out there running, you're breaking down your body, you're getting mentally fatigued, you're getting, sleep deprived, and you have to let your body rest. And I used to think of it as, well, I'm taking a rest day. And now I think of it more as I'm taking an active recovery day. Like there are
100%.
very specific things that I do to take care of myself. And it's the same thing on the entrepreneurial journey. You cannot redline day after day after day and expect you or your company to have a good performance. You have to take a step back and take care of yourself to plan for the long run, because we can all, you know, go hard and fast for a sprint, but not if we're going to be in it for the long haul.
Yeah, I had about a 2-year period, really, a year and a half, 2 years, where it was excessive, and then it led to, tons of weight gain and, lots of unfavorable things, right? And so, it's interesting to be able to, take care of yourself. I do wanna go back because you had mentioned the podcast, and I do wanna talk about that a little bit because that also kind of ties into, the marketing side. Um, the podcast has been a fantastic. I think the podcast has actually been my number one tool for marketing. I suggest if there's anyone listening to this podcast and you're in a more of a niche business, like helicopters, very niche. Starting a podcast or creating content that resonates with the people that you're trying to serve has been awesome for me, and it's been a really cool journey. I don't know about you guys. I figured I would start a podcast, and my mom would listen, and share it with my aunt and uncle, and it's turned into something really cool. We have consistent good downloads. Um, I go to these helicopter expos now, and I feel like I'm known. People come up to me and they want their picture, and it's all these cool things. It's just been such a great tool to not only connect with the audience and the people I serve and have them feel like they know me, but also it allows me to have conversations with top executives at OEMs and top executives at other companies and people within other companies. And then we build that relationship. And now it's B2B. And now I'm able to, work with that business because they feel like they know me. We had a, hour and a half long conversation about them, and I highlighted them and their business. Didn't once talk about me or sales or this or that. It was just a fun way to promote them. And so the podcast has been just probably, if I ever write a book, the podcast will be like, the best decision ever, will be the chapter of that one.
I love it. I think I don't remember if it was a business coach or if it was a book I read, but they said every business really shouldn't be the helicopter business or whatever, the property management business or whatever. It really should be a media business that does X or does Y. And it just goes to prove like we are in a world of media. Everybody's vying for your time. But if you could produce good content, that's the beauty of it. It's free. It's valuable. It gives people resources without having to actually sell or buy anything, which is super, super awesome. I love that about the world that we live in. Tell us a little bit about North American Aircraft Brokerage and kind of where you're going with that rebrand, and we'll kind of wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, not necessarily a rebrand. It's more of like a sister company coming into complementing what we do on the helicopter side and bringing it into the airplane side. And
The
part of the
dark
reason
side,
why
let's just be correct here.
the dark side, I will say, from a business standpoint, planes make a lot of sense. An expensive helicopters, maybe $4 million. That's a cheap airplane, right? And we're percentage based, typically off sales price. So I like airplanes for that on the sales side. And we just, the reason why we ended up kind of actually going into a separate brand is first and foremost, Sellacopter is very helicopter specific. And I think it's kind of cheeky. I didn't love the name of Sellacopter for a long time. And I think people used to chirp it a little bit. Now that we've actually gained a lot of recognition and people like working with us, people respect and enjoy the name Sellacopter. But I just felt like, man, it's too helicopter focused. And I have a business development guy on the Sellacopter team who's just outstanding. And one of he's entrepreneurial and he ownership was important to him, and I knew at some point I would probably lose him because he was going to go and do his own thing, and he'd do great at it. Uh, he has an entrepreneurial spirit. So I figured, hey, look, let's actually partner up on this. Let's work together, and let's both put money into it. Let's put so we funded the business. He has a good stake in it. We have another minority partner who's actually my accountant. I brought him on because with airplanes, there's a lot of cool opportunity in the future for kind of floor plan financing and other fun things that we can do to bring aircraft on and spec and things like that. And so, essentially, we started that business. There's three of us now. It's whereas Sellacopter, I'm the sole owner. I did start with a partner, and I bought him out early. And yeah, we're just complementing what we do on the helicopter side, and we're bringing all those same processes into the airplane side, and trying to see where they conform and where we might have to be a little bit flexible, and amend that process. And so far we launched like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I think, during MBAA, which is a big expo for private airplanes. And even before that, we had already sold an aircraft. We're actually just placing another aircraft under contract today. So just really excited about NAAB, North American Aircraft Brokerage, and being able to do what we do on the helicopter side and rinse and repeat into the airplane world.
That's super exciting, Halsey. I'm excited for you, and I'm curious to see how that will pan out. I'm sure it'll be a huge success. Congrats.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I'm really excited about it. It's going to be good stuff, I hope.
All right, I want to highlight one thing here before we wrap up, and that was that you mentioned that you had somebody on your team that was really good. And I think that sometimes people can start to fear that a little bit. And I want to highlight that mindset that you had of really leaning into, hey, I have this person that's going to grow with or without me. And I'm going to lean into that and I'm going to help them grow together. I'm not going to try to cage them or contain them or stifle their ability to go off and do something. I'm going to lean into that and become a part of it and really leverage their expertise to create something for yourself that wouldn't have been, but also provide an opportunity and help them jumpstart whatever they were going to do. And I think that a lot of times it can go one of two ways. When you have somebody on your team, you can say, I hope that I train them so well that they leave, as opposed to, I hope I can keep them caged so that they stay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's I like to go the first option, because if I'm training them well and they can be successful, then hopefully it's the culture that will allow them to want to stay at Helicopter and the growth potential. This particular individual, though, just had so much aspiration of this idea of ownership because entrepreneurialism and business ownership was important to him. Typically, I would actually be kind of against partners, to be honest. I've had experiences in the past, and so we went through a very intense process. He came up to Oregon. He lives on the East Coast. We spent nearly 10 days together, essentially locked in a room, going through every horrible scenario that could happen within a partnership and figuring out how we would mitigate that. And we were able to get through that process. And I think him and I will be fantastic partners together. I think he's tremendous at business development and great on the airplane side. So yeah, I think it was a good move, and excited to have him be able to also achieve his goals and ownership.
Awesome. Well, I will mention that if our audience has the slightest interest in helicopters, to go check out the Helicopter podcast. It is really awesome. I love hearing your conversations. It's a lot of fun. Of course, I love helicopters. And so, I'm obviously intrigued there. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention congratulations to Tony Klein, who just became a grandfather yesterday. So kudos to our co-host on that,
Thank you.
sweet little Nora, right?
That's
Nora?
awesome. Congrats.
Yep, Nora. Yep.
Yeah, so pretty cool. And Halsey, we know your time is valuable. Thank you so much for your time today. And you've got a very important appointment to get to. So thank you again. It was awesome speaking.
Yeah. Hey guys, thank you so much. Really cool opportunity, and congratulations to your podcast. And I hope that you continue to grow it, and I'll continue to be a fan.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next time to cut through the noise of what it really takes to be a successful entrepreneur.
If today's episode hit home, share it with a friend. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.